Geometry, Notes, Section 9.4, Trig and Systems of Equations. Problem number 1. A homeless giant is at the top of a building. We should probably draw the ground. We should probably draw a building. We should probably draw a giant. Homeless giant is at the top of a building. 200 feet from the base of the building, the angle of elevation of the top of the hobo is 32 degrees. A hobo and a homeless person is the same thing. So this is referring to the same person. So it says 200 feet from the base, the angle of elevation at the top of the hobo is 32 degrees. So this right here, this angle of elevation, 32 degrees. And the angle of elevation to the bottom of the hobo is 30 degrees. Well, that makes this interesting. Let me get rid of this. I'll show you why here in a second. The top is 32 degrees. The bottom is 30 degrees. Just wanted some space to put that 32. Alrighty. Determine the height of the hobo to the nearest foot. Well, the unfortunate thing is this homeless dude, he's not like an entire side of a right triangle. We have two right triangles in this problem. We have this purple right triangle, and we also have this green right triangle. So although we can't find the height of the homeless man directly, we can find it indirectly. For example, in this purple triangle, we could figure out the length of y, the height of that purple triangle. In the green triangle, we could figure out the length of z, which is the height of the building and the homeless man combined. Now, what's the value of that? If we know that this is 50 and we know this is 20, we know what the distance left is 30. That's the segment addition postulate. So let's try to make an equation. This is many steps. I'm going to call this step 1. Step 2 is trying to figure out what y is. So y is going to be tangent of 30 degrees is the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. If I multiply both sides by 200, put that in my calculator, that's about 115.47. Figure out what z is, that's the height of the green triangle. Call this step 3. Tangent of 32 degrees is z over 200. Therefore, 200 times tangent of 32 degrees is z. If you put that in your calculator, you get 124.97. Now, once again, that's all fine and dandy, but we need an equation for the height of the man. If you take y plus the height of the hobo, you should get z. Y is 115.47. Don't know what the hobo is. Z is 124.97. You subtract 115.47 from both sides, you get that the hobo is 9.5 feet tall. He's 9 feet 6 inches is what that's saying. Sentence answer, the hobo is about, we use rounded numbers, 9.5 feet tall. Cool. Let's check out number 2. Let's drop a deuce. In a rubber ducky floaty, 400 feet from the base of the Cliffs of Insanity, George sees the base of the Starbucks at 18 degrees and the top of the Starbucks at 21 degrees. How tall is the Starbucks to the nearest foot? All right, so we need some water. We need a rubber ducky. We need George. In a rubber ducky floaty, 400 feet from the base of the Cliffs of Insanity, we need a cliff. Wrong button. In case it's not obvious. It says that he is 400 feet from that cliff. He sees the base of the Starbucks at the top. George sees the base of the Starbucks at 18 degrees and the top at 21. It's implied here, I believe, that this Starbucks is on top of the Cliffs of Insanity. Get it? Starbucks. So we got to here, which is 18 degrees, and then we got to the top. It's supposed to be vertical. To the top is 21 degrees. This is very similar to the last one we did. In fact, conceptually, it's identical. How tall is the Starbucks? Well, let's call the height of the cliff y once again. Let's say that the cliffs plus Starbucks is z. So we make a picture. Let's draw an equation to figure out what y is. Tangent of 18 degrees is the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. Let's make an equation for z. Tangent of 21 degrees is z over 400. Because once again, we have this big triangle that has a right angle in it, the right angle being where the cliff hits the water. We're assuming that, which is fine to assume. And then we have this smaller triangle that goes to the bottom of the Starbucks. Solving each of these little fellas, we're going to multiply 400 times both sides of the equation in both of the equations. Put this in our calculators. We're going to get 129.97 is about the height of the cliffs above the water, and 153.55 is about the height of the Starbucks above the water. Well, how tall is Starbucks? If I add the Starbucks plus the height of the cliffs, that should equal the height of the Starbucks plus the cliffs. So it'll be step 4. Don't know what the Starbucks is? I do know that the cliff's height is 129.97 and that the height to the top of the Starbucks from the water is 153.55. I subtract 129.97 from both sides. I get that the Starbucks is about 23.58 feet tall. The Starbucks is about it says around to the nearest foot, the direction says. So it's about 24 feet tall. Alrighty, number 3. Don't know why Paradoxosaur is highlighted like that. That is weird. Isn't it weird? Why is that like that? Oh well. Number 3. George and his Paradoxosaur are on either side of a giant, steamy pile of Paradoxosaur poop and are 40 feet apart. George sees the top of the poop at 42 degrees and his Paradoxosaur sees the top of the poop at 36 degrees. How high is the pile of poop to the nearest foot? First of all, what is a Paradoxosaur? Well, it's a dinosaur that if you believe it exists, it doesn't. But if you don't believe that it exists, it does. It's a paradoxosaur. Let's draw the ground, people. George and his Paradoxosaur are on either side of a giant, steamy pile. Let's draw this poo, shall we? Everyone knows that Paradoxosaur poop is pink. Steamy. George, they're either side of it. They're 40 feet apart, so let's draw George. Paradoxosaur is on the other side. They are 40 feet apart. So from here to here, it's 40 feet. Alrighty. George sees the top of the poop at 42 degrees. Doesn't say what the height of his eyes are, so we're just going to draw it and ignore his height. Paradoxosaur sees it at 36 degrees. How high is the pile of poop to the nearest foot? So let's call the height here y. Now, this looks different than the last two that we did, so we got to do a little bit of thinking here. In the triangle on the left, which I will call the green triangle, we have an angle 42. We want to know what y is. We don't know the length of any other side. In the triangle on the right, which I'll call the blue triangle, we have a similar situation. We have an angle. We know it's a right triangle. Trying to find a length of a side. We don't know the length of any of the sides. So what shall we do? Well, check this out. This whole thing is 40. What if I said to you that the distance that the Paradoxosaur is from the center of the poo is x? If I said that, I didn't want to use another variable. What would the distance George be to the center of the poop? Whole thing is 40. We have used x here. So in other words, George's distance plus x has to be 40. It's the segment addition postulate. So doing some algebra, we would get the distance that George is from the poop is 40 minus x. So if the Paradoxosaur is 10 feet from it, George would have to be 30. 30 and 10 is 40. Now we can make some equations and we can get some stuff done here. This is going to get crazy, okay? It's going to get so crazy. Let's make the equation for the Paradoxosaur first. Tangent of 36 degrees equals y over x. We can't solve it. There are two variables. Awkward. Let's make an equation for George. Tangent of 42 degrees. My degree symbol sometimes gets so big it looks like it's a 0. Equals y over 40 minus x. Oh, we can't solve that. There's two variables. What shall we do? Well, we can use a system of equations. System of equations just means that for every variable you have an equation. We have two variables, we have two equations. This should be something that we can do. We did this in algebra, and hopefully once you see this, you'll be reminded of how you did it in algebra. We're going to solve by substitution. I'm going to take the easier equation, which is this one here. It's more simplified. And I'm going to get y by itself. Then I'm going to substitute into this equation. I'm going to replace the y here with what it's equal to, which is x over tangent of 36. How's that helpful? Well, it's helpful because now I have one equation with one variable. Now we just have to solve this not so simple equation. We're going to multiply both sides by the denominator. It's more than one term, so I got to put it in parentheses. Then I need to distribute the tangent of 42. So I'm going to get 40 tangent of 42 degrees minus x tangent of 42 degrees equals x tangent of 36 degrees. Then I want to get like terms on the same side of the equation. This term and this term both have x's in it. So I'm going to move this over to the right. This looks complicated. It's always going to look complicated because there's so many variables. We got trig functions in this, but conceptually, all we're doing is simple algebra. We need to get one x in this problem. There's two x's. There's one here and there's one here. We can easily fix that by factoring an x out of each of those terms. So if I GCF an x out, now we only have one x in the problem. We are now going to divide both sides by this hot mess. And I made a mistake here. When I factored this x out, put this in front, this x should not be there. I'm just going to highlight where I removed that from. X where that blue should not have been there. Be careful. These are not like terms. Tangent of 36 and tangent of 42. You cannot combine those in any way, shape, or form. If you were to put this in your calculator correctly, you would get 22.14 is what x is. Now, the question was, what is the height of the poo? So now, step 4, we're going to take this equation, which is x tangent of 36 degrees equals y. We're going to replace x with 22.14. Substitution. Property of equality for real numbers. If you put that in your calculator, you get about 16.09. Sentence answer. The poop is about 16 foot tall because the directions said round to the nearest foot. All right, this last problem we won't do together. Try to do it on your own. It's done extremely similarly that number 3 was done. If you get in trouble, check out the handwritten key online. And if you get in a lot of trouble, just copy the key online and then ask me about it in person. And then please do the homework from 9.4. Have a wonderful day.